It started with the soft hum of rain against the window and the quiet rhythm of a sleeping child. Lydia's eyes were half closed when she heard it. The faintest crackle of static through the baby monitor. Then came the cry, soft and trembling like Eli's first nights home from the hospital. She reached for the device on the nightstand, heart steady at first, until the cry shifted. "Mommy," the voice whispered. "I'm not your child." The words crawled through her like ice. She froze, staring at the monitor's green light flickering in rhythm with the sound. Beside her, Eli stirred, but didn't wake. "Who's there?" she whispered. The answer came in broken static. "Where did you bury me?" Lydia's breath caught. The house seemed to hold its own breath. Rain fell harder, thunder in the distance, and then silence. Until the monitor crackled again with a soft, mocking giggle that wasn't Eli's. The next morning, sunlight filtered weakly through the curtains, but it brought no comfort. Lydia sat at the kitchen table, eyes hollow, staring at the monitor placed beside her coffee mug. It was silent now, too silent. Eli hummed softly at the counter, drawing on scrap paper with his crayons. "Mommy," he said suddenly, not looking up. "The boy says he wants to come in." Her stomach tightened. "What boy?" she asked, voice too calm. Eli shrugged, his small hand sketching two stick figures, one standing by a window, the other outside in the rain. Lydia stared at the picture, at the black crayon smudging into gray. Somewhere deep inside her, a memory flickered. Mud, water, screaming. And she pushed it away. The baby monitor clicked once, just loud enough to sound like a heartbeat. That night, Lydia couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like a whisper. She kept the baby monitor on the dresser, convinced it might start again if she closed her eyes. The clock read 2:14 when it did. Static first. Then the unmistakable sound of a child breathing. She turned toward Eli's bed across the room. He was asleep, chest rising slow and even, but the breathing in the monitor didn't match his rhythm. It was slower, deeper, older somehow. "Mommy," the voice rasped. Lydia's body went cold. She turned off the device, unplugged it, and threw it into the drawer. But the breathing didn't stop. It was coming from the drawer itself. The following day, Lydia brought the monitor to the garage, intending to throw it away. But when she lifted the lid of the trash bin, a strange cold wind brushed her face, unnatural, sharp. Somewhere, faintly, the monitor whispered again, the same two words, "Come back." Her hands trembled so badly she dropped it, and it clattered across the concrete, landing face up. For a second, the tiny screen flickered, showing the lake. That lake. The one she hadn't visited in over 15 years. The voice of a girl echoed faintly through the static, a memory clawing its way out of the dark. "You promised you'd never leave me." Lydia staggered back, shaking her head, whispering, "No, not again." The screen went black. That evening, as the sun bled red behind the trees, Lydia sat on the porch, the monitor silent beside her. The air felt too still, too thick, as if the world itself was waiting. Eli played quietly on the steps, stacking small wooden blocks. "Mommy," he said suddenly without looking up. "The boy says he remembers the water." Lydia froze, her mouth dry. "What water?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Eli tilted his head as if listening to something she couldn't hear. "The one that took him away." The monitor crackled once, soft but sharp enough to make her flinch. Lydia's heart pounded as she stared toward the line of woods where the lake slept unseen beyond the trees. The voice didn't return, but the silence after it felt alive. For 3 nights, Lydia barely slept. The house had grown restless. Every floorboard seemed to breathe. Every gust of wind carried a whisper. She'd unplugged the monitor, locked it away in the drawer, even wrapped it in towels to muffle any sound. But every night at 3:03, the same low hum returned, seeping through the walls as if the house itself remembered. Eli began to wake crying, claiming someone was in his room talking about the lake. Lydia wanted to believe it was imagination, an echo of her own sleepless fears. But one morning she found tiny wet footprints on the hallway floor, leading from Eli's room to her own, vanishing just before the bed. By afternoon, Lydia had convinced herself to seek help, or at least an explanation. She called the company that made the monitor. The representative's cheerful tone faded as soon as Lydia read the serial number. "That model's been discontinued for years," he said. "We stopped making it after some interference issues." When Lydia asked what kind, the line hissed with static. Then came a familiar child's whisper, low and trembling. "You can't turn me off." Lydia dropped the phone, heart hammering. When she picked it up again, the line was dead, except for faint breathing that wasn't hers. That evening, Lydia's unease turned to panic. She woke to the sound of dripping water, rhythmic and steady. In the dim light, she saw Eli standing by the window, staring into the dark yard. His pajamas were soaked from the knees down, his small feet leaving damp prints across the floor. "Eli," she whispered, rising slowly. "Where were you?" He turned, eyes glassy, voice monotone. "He," said the water, "feels like sleep." Lydia's breath caught. "Who?" she asked. Eli blinked, then frowned, confused, as if waking from a dream. "The boy," he murmured. "He's cold." The baby monitor on the dresser turned itself on, static building until it drowned the silence. The next morning brought no peace. Lydia found Eli sitting in the yard, his toys abandoned, his small hands digging into the damp earth. When she asked what he was doing, he looked up, dirt under his nails, and said simply, "He told me to find his face." Lydia's nearly gave out. That night, she dreamed of the lake, its surface like glass, the moon shattering across it as a small hand reached up from below, pulling at her wrist, dragging her down. When she woke, the monitor sat beside her pillow, though she hadn't touched it in days. The green light blinked once, then twice, as if acknowledging her fear. When the storm rolled in that night, Lydia tried to drown the noise with music, anything to stop the whispers. But every time thunder struck, she heard it, faint but clear, coming through the speakers, the same voice from the monitor bleeding into every device in the house. "You left me," it said. "You promised you'd come back." Lydia pressed her hands over her ears, tears streaming down her face. The power flickered, the lights dimmed. Eli screamed from his room. When she burst through the door, he was sitting upright in bed, eyes wide, pointing toward the corner. "Mommy," he sobbed. "He's right there." By morning, the storm had passed, but the air felt bruised, heavy, untrustworthy. Lydia called the police, her voice cracking as she tried to explain that her son had seen someone in the house. When the officer on the line mentioned a name, Detective Rowan Hale, her blood turned cold. She remembered that name too well. 15 years ago, he'd investigated the disappearance of her younger sister, Mara. No body, no proof, just whispers and suspicion that never faded. When Hale's car pulled into her driveway hours later, Lydia almost didn't open the door. But then she heard it again, faint through the monitor she thought she'd hidden. A child's voice whispering, "He knows." Hale didn't believe in hauntings, only guilt. He moved through the house methodically, asking careful questions Lydia couldn't answer. The missing sister case had never left him. He'd seen the same lake, The same house in too many sleepless dreams. You said your son mentioned a boy. He pressed. Lydia nodded, eyes distant. He says the boy remembers the water. Hale's jaw tightened. He'd read those words before, in a report Lydia never saw. You know, he said softly. Some memories don't die just because we pretend they never happened. Lydia's eyes filled. The baby monitor crackled faintly on the table, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. That night, Lydia dreamed of the lake again. She was 16, standing on the dock, her sister Mara crying beside her. You told Mom, Lydia hissed, voice full of teenage venom. You always ruin everything. Mara's small hands clutched her wrist, pleading, but Lydia's anger had blurred everything that came next. Only the splash remained. She'd run home sobbing, told no one. In her dream, Mara floated beneath the surface, eyes open, mouth forming the same words, now echoing through the monitor. You left me. Lydia woke screaming, drenched in sweat. The monitor beside her flickered, showing the reflection of water rippling across her ceiling. Hale returned the next morning with an old case file in his hand. You said the monitor showed the lake, he said, spreading faded photos across the table. Muddy footprints, a dock collapsing under rot, a girl's hair ribbon snagged on a branch. Lydia stared at the photos, her throat dry. You told us she slipped, Hale said quietly, but there were bruises. The room tilted around her. The monitor, silent on the counter, began to hum faintly, its light shifting from green to red. Hale frowned. Is that plugged in? Lydia shook her head. Then the monitor spoke again in a small, trembling voice that made both of them freeze. You pushed me. That evening, Hale drove to the lake. Lydia followed, compelled by the same force that had haunted her for years. The water was calm, the woods thick with fog. Hale scanned the shore with his flashlight while Lydia stood at the edge, staring at the reflection of herself rippling on the surface. This is where you said she fell, Hale murmured. Lydia nodded, trembling. But she didn't fall, she whispered. Her voice broke. I pushed her. I was angry and she hit her head. I tried to pull her back, but her confession vanished into the wind. Then faintly the lake rippled though nothing had touched it. The baby monitor in Hale's coat pocket clicked on by itself, whispering a single word. Finally. Detective Hale stayed at Lydia's house longer than expected, sifting through old case files, photographs, and police reports. Every detail seemed to pull Lydia deeper into the memories she had tried to bury. Each photo of Mara, the dock, the lake, the scattered leaves, stirred a knot of shame in her chest. Eli watched quietly, coloring at the kitchen table, oblivious to the storm of guilt raging in the room. Hale's voice was steady, patient, precise. Lydia, memories can betray you, but evidence doesn't. Let's figure out what really happened. Her throat tightened. The old baby monitor, still tucked in a drawer, seemed insignificant now, but its presence had become a symbol of the secrets she could no longer hide. Lydia retraced her memories under Hale's guidance. Each detail returned in fragments. Mara laughing on the dock, the sound of rushing water, a sudden slip, and a moment of panic. You were only 16, Hale said gently, but even mistakes leave traces. Lydia's chest tightened as she described how she tried to cover it up, how fear had silenced her for years. Hale made notes without judgment, but every sentence Lydia spoke felt like shedding layers of herself she had carried too long. Eli's small voice interrupted her thoughts. Mommy, I found the picture he told me about. On the kitchen floor was a drawing. 2 figures by a lake, one reaching for the other. It mirrored Lydia's memory exactly. That evening, Hale led Lydia to Mara's old bedroom. The paint was faded, shelves dusty, but everything was familiar. He suggested they search for overlooked evidence, something physical that could corroborate her memory. Lydia's hands shook as she touched Mara's old blanket, tracing the frayed edges. "It's strange," Hale said, "how the mind holds on to guilt, even when no one else knows." Lydia nodded, realizing that she had been punishing herself longer than anyone had suspected. On the desk lay Mara's old diary. Hesitant, Lydia opened it. The entries were full of laughter, scolding, and secrets she had almost forgotten. Each word was a thread connecting her guilt to the truth she now had to face. As the night grew darker, Hale suggested retracing Lydia's steps to the lake, the site of Mara's disappearance. Lydia felt a knot in her stomach tighten. The woods smelled of wet leaves and moss, the familiar path almost suffocating in its closeness. Hale's flashlight cut a path through the darkness. Each step seemed heavier, as if her memories weighed down her legs. She saw the dock in her mind, the one that had collapsed, the panic, the silence afterward. "You never meant it," Hale said quietly. Lydia exhaled shakily. "But guilt doesn't need proof to haunt you." The only sounds were their footsteps and Eli's soft humming behind them. At the lake, Hale asked Lydia to stand at the water's edge, closing her eyes to recall the exact moment Mara slipped. Memories came in fragments. The laughter, the sudden loss of balance, the desperate reach, the splash, and then running home in shock. Hale took careful notes, listening, guiding, but never judging. "You've carried this alone," he said softly. "It's time the truth carries weight beyond you." Lydia's chest heaved as she admitted everything aloud. Each word a release. Eli watched silently, sensing that something heavy was finally lifting. The lake reflected the moonlight, still and pure, as if waiting to accept her confession and let her move forward. The air at the lake was colder now, heavy with mist curling over the surface. Lydia stood with her feet in the shallow water, heart hammering in her chest. Every step closer to the center of the dock was a step into her past, and into the guilt she had hidden for 15 years. Hale remained nearby, silent but steady, letting her confront her memories alone. "I have to face it," Lydia whispered, voice barely audible over the soft lapping of water. She lifted a hand, tracing the ripple that formed around her reflection. I pushed her. I didn't mean to. I panicked, and I left her alone." Her voice broke, tears spilling into the water. Each confession felt like a stone released from her chest, sinking slowly into the dark depths. Hale gently guided Lydia toward the old rope swing that Mara had loved, now frayed and forgotten. "Sometimes the truth isn't just in words," he said softly. Lydia knelt, brushing leaves and mud away, revealing a small wooden locket she had buried long ago. Mara's. It was a physical anchor to her memory and her guilt. Lydia clutched it, sobbing, feeling the years of silence and shame pour out of her. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice trembling. The sound of Eli's small voice broke through her thoughts. "Mommy, she's okay now." Lydia looked at her son and realized he had been guiding her toward this reckoning all along, helping her face the truth she had buried inside herself. The lake seemed to accept her apology. The water stilled completely, and for the first time in years, Lydia felt an absence of weight inside her chest. Hale's voice was gentle but firm. "You've acknowledged the truth, Lydia. That's the first step." She nodded, shivering but relieved. "I'll never forget," she said. "But I can move forward." Eli climbed onto the dock beside her, holding her hand tightly, grounding her. For the first time in a long time, she felt present, not haunted, not trapped by guilt. It wasn't just a reconciliation with the past. It was a chance at living again. Lydia returned home that night carrying the locket and a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in years. She laid it carefully in a small wooden box on the shelf beside Eli's toys. The house felt warmer somehow, even though it was dark outside. She tucked Eli into bed, brushing his hair back, and whispered a promise. "We'll be okay now. We'll be careful with our memories." As she left his room, she noticed the baby monitor resting silently on the nightstand. She didn't feel fear this time. She simply unplugged it, letting it rest, just as she had begun to rest herself. Before leaving the lake the next morning, Lydia placed Mara's locket in a small box of memories, ready to be preserved rather than hidden. She turned to Hale, her voice steady for the first time in years. "Thank you," she said. He nodded quietly, understanding that this case wasn't about punishment but about acknowledgement. Eli ran ahead to collect fallen leaves, laughing softly. Lydia followed, chest lighter, heart open. The voice she once feared, whether memory, guilt, or imagination, was finally silent. And for the first time in 15 years, she could breathe, could forgive herself, and could live again. Weeks had passed, and the house felt lighter. Lydia walked through each room, noticing small details she had ignored for years. The soft sunlight on the living room carpet, Eli's laughter echoing through the halls, the smell of freshly baked bread. She had started journaling, recording memories of Mara, her regrets, and the lessons she had learned. Each written word felt like a small release. Eli ran through the rooms, chasing shadows and playful delight. Lydia watched him, chest full of warmth. She realized that the past no longer had to control her. Acknowledgement had given her the strength to move forward. One afternoon, Hale visited. Carrying new files for a cold case, he thought Lydia could help close with her testimony. Sitting together at the kitchen table, Lydia recounted every detail of Mara's disappearance with clarity and honesty. Hale nodded, noting her poise and confidence. "You faced what haunted you," he said. Lydia felt a sense of accomplishment she hadn't known she could feel. Eli sat between them, coloring happily, occasionally glancing up to smile at his mother. The house, once oppressive and tense, now radiated calm. It was proof that truth and acceptance could transform fear into something far stronger. Peace. At night, Lydia tucked Eli into bed without a trace of hesitation or fear. She lingered, brushing back his curls, smiling softly at the peaceful rhythm of his breathing. For the first time, she didn't glance at the baby monitor. She didn't need reassurance. Instead, she whispered stories of Mara's laughter and the lessons she had learned, letting Eli drift into dreams filled with light and warmth. The house was quiet, safe, and full of love. Proof that she had succeeded in breaking the cycle of fear and guilt. The following weekend, Lydia and Eli returned to the lake, not out of fear, but to honor Mara's memory. They planted a small tree near the old dock, a symbol of life and renewal. Lydia explained to Eli how memories, even painful ones, could guide them to make better choices and cherish what was important. Eli smiled, placing his toy fox at the base of the tree. Lydia felt the weight of guilt lifting completely. In the reflection of the lake, she no longer saw fear or shame, only the possibility of a future built on truth, love, and courage. That evening, Lydia finally allowed herself to sit quietly on the porch, watching Eli play in the yard. She felt the stillness of the house, the gentle rhythm of her heartbeat, and the soft breeze against her skin. She realized that guilt no longer had a hold over her. It had been transformed into understanding and compassion. The past was remembered, acknowledged, and laid to rest. She smiled softly, letting the day's peace settle into her bones. Tomorrow would come, bright and unafraid, and she would meet it ready. Morning light spilled gently across the house. Lydia stood at the doorway, watching Eli chase leaves in the yard, his laughter clear and bright. The weight she had carried for 15 years had been lifted, replaced with quiet strength and presence. The baby monitor, once a source of dread, lay unplugged on the shelf, a relic of fear now transformed into a reminder of her courage. She inhaled deeply, savoring the ordinary peace of her home, the soft hum of life around her. Nothing supernatural lingered, nothing threatening. Only the truth remained. held steady by honesty, love, and memory. Later that day, Lydia placed Mara's locket in a small keepsake box beside old photographs. A tangible acknowledgement of the sister she had lost and the mistakes she had survived. Hale stopped by one last time, smiling faint. "You've done what needed to be done," he said, voice calm and respectful. Lydia nodded, finally at peace with herself. Eli tugged at her hand, urging her to play, and she laughed. A sound unburdened, unshadowed. Every moment now carried light, each memory balanced with acceptance. The past was no longer a chain, but a teacher guiding her forward. As evening fell, Lydia stood on the porch, Eli nestled against her side, both of them watching the horizon bathed in pink and gold. The wind carried the faint scent of autumn leaves, the promise of change, and the joy of life continuing. She felt a deep calm settle over her. The guilt and fear she once carried had been replaced by understanding, self-forgiveness, and love for her son. Every sound, every shadow, now felt safe. The house, the yard, the lake, in memory, they were hers to hold without fear. She whispered softly, "We are okay now." And for the first time, the words felt complete and true. That night, as Eli slept peacefully, Lydia sat quietly in the living room, journal in hand. She wrote of the past, the mistakes, and the lessons, recording her journey not as shame, but as triumph. Every word was a promise, to herself, to Mara, and to Ellie, that life could continue with honesty, courage, and love. The shadows of her old fears were gone, replaced with the quiet light of acceptance. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying away the last traces of guilt. Lydia smiled softly, closing her journal. Tomorrow would be another day, unburdened and full of possibility. As dawn broke, Lydia and Eli walked hand in hand along the path to the lake, the same place that had once held fear and guilt. This time, they walked with laughter and freedom. She paused to place a small bouquet of wildflowers at the old dock, a tribute not to loss, but to resilience, love, and the life she could now embrace fully. Eli ran ahead, small feet splashing in puddles, turning to wave. Lydia inhaled deeply, feeling the crisp morning air fill her lungs. The past had been faced. The truth had been spoken, and she had survived. The lake mirrored the sky, clear and open, just as her heart now was.